Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Star Citizen Alpha 4.0 is improving, but there is still much to do. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members, in particular to my latest patron Glassmore, and to Wolf, Cormac, Marco, Dan Brummel, and Starmate, who are my latest channel members. Thank you so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. So Alpha 4.0, which is currently on the EPTU for the Evocati and Wave 1 testers, is certainly a big improvement over the previous test, but there is still a lot to do to iron it out before it can expand to more waves. Now, this current build is a bit of a mixed bag of good and bad. I have seen many stating that they cannot get out of their own habs in the Pyro space stations. Some are stuck in hangars, some are stuck in their ship seats. There does seem to be a pretty excessive delay, plus there is quite a bit of desync at the space stations as well. Now, there are a lot of reports of server errors, for myself included. I have had quite a few in this patch, but I think the vast majority of these server errors are due to players trying to jump through the Stanton Pyro jump gates, or even visiting the jump gates, because we are asked in the patch notes not to go there because they can cause a crash. Although Cloud Imperium have stated that there is a hotfix coming for this, but I was playing last night, and at that time there didn't seem to be one. But when I read in-game chat, there is a lot of people asking why or stating that the jump gates seem to be pretty buggy. So I think a lot of people who aren't aware of this known issue are actually causing a large amount of the server errors. Plus, not everyone is affected by the server error. It is dependent on what server or shard you are on at the same time as well. Now, on the plus side, the server error duration has decreased massively, as in the speed at which the server recovers. That is much quicker than the previous build, which is a huge improvement. Also, client frame rate has certainly increased a lot for me in this build, especially around space stations, going from 10 to 20 frames at best in the previous build to 25 to 45 in this build, averaging above the 30 mark. It only dropped into the red a few times. Now, interaction delay and player-to-player desync is very prevalent in this current build still, but only really at space stations. And I can only talk for Obituary here, as I haven't been to the other space stations in this build, but I suspect it is happening at all three, as that is where the vast majority of players are located, as they're all spawning in at these space stations. Now, the entity count for the space stations has decreased dramatically from the previous build, which is probably where most of the performance gains are coming from, as it was around 200,000 entities on the previous build, and if I recall correctly, I think I was seeing around 80,000 during the last time I was at Obituary, but of course, the duration of time that the patch has been up, when I was getting 200,000 versus a more fresh patch with 80,000 could be the reason, but hopefully they've culled a lot of the unnecessary entities. And for comparison, the main landing zones in Stanton at the higher end can get to about 130,000 entities from what I've seen. So compared to the previous build of 200,000 plus, it is a big improvement. Hopefully it can remain at around the 80,000 mark or less for the duration of the test, but we will see. Now, the new queuing system for entering the PTU seems to be pretty helpful, which was introduced to reduce the load on the servers as new players join. So instead of everyone jumping into a space station at the same time, there is now a queue for that. And for choice of a better word, it kind of drips players in with a 10-second per queue number speed. So if you are third in the queue, it should take around 30 seconds before you start loading in, and it just kind of trickles people in rather than throwing them all in at once. And finally, for the performance and stability side of things, the minute you leave a space station in Pyro, it gets much better, especially for the server frame rate, as you probably transition from one server to another. So the server FPS for Obituary went from around 5 to 12 FPS to moving out of Obituary's server to around 15 to 30 FPS for the server in most cases, and I found that it stuck around that number for quite a while. Of course, when we get dynamic server meshing completely integrated, it'll just swap you onto a fresh server when it gets too low, but for what we have now, which is static with some elements of dynamic, is kind of a combination of the two, It is so refreshing when you get away from a station and things just settle down much nicer. I have also managed to have my graphics settings, including clouds, maxed out. I generally record at 2K 27-inch kind of monitor, with it only occasionally dipping into the red when I was visiting planetside locations, especially when there's a lot of other players there or other ships there. But overall, for performance, it is a massive improvement from the previous build, both stability and performance really, but there is still a lot more to do to optimize both client FPS and server FPS, desync, interaction delay, especially around places like space stations where it seems a lot more prevalent. But it has been a lot of fun playing in Pyro with decent performance. It is so refreshing to be there and actually take it all in without having to deal with all those other issues. NPCs seem to be moving around fine, much better now as well, but I have not really tested them in any other situation than they're just in the background at a space station or planetside location. But with performance out of the way, let's talk a bit more about the patch and what it has. The missions are kind of slowly being introduced with the mission system refactor getting implemented, but I am yet to have any I can actually do aside from seeing things like salvage missions or the service beacons for medical rescue for players. Now, I did have a couple of wildlife control missions pop up for the Citizens for Prosperity, asking me to go and cull some Copians at an abandoned outpost. However, the mission marker never showed where I was supposed to go, so I couldn't complete it. One was for Pyro 1 and the other one was for Pyro 2, and I was at that time on Pyro 2. And according to the patch notes, it says missions will be more localized to the exact point of interest that you are at. Now, I don't know if that means point of interest being the planet that you're on, or the planetside location you are at. As I say, I saw a mission for both Pyro 1 and Pyro 2 while on Pyro 2. But hopefully, with each patch that we get for 4.0, we will see more missions become available, and many of these missions actually keeping you around a single location for a while. That would be a dream. Now, the quasi-grazers are also finally in and can be found on Microtech, Bloom, and on Hurston apparently. I found some at Frigid Knot, which is on Bloom. It's an outpost in the colder region of the planet. They were all huddled together. They eventually sat down for the evening and just laid down in a kind of a circle, which was quite cute. They can look a bit weird at times and sort of bug out, but they are pretty majestic. I am really liking them, especially the big furry ones. For ships and vehicles, the Karak now has its blast shields and cargo access. As it seems, the cargo bay doors don't lower all the way down to the ground, but it is still very handy to have them finally opening. Of course, the end goal here is to have them as modules, so they will lower down and they will be swappable, but just opening right now is a big win. The patch notes also say that they have included the Starlancer, the Polaris, the Intrepid, the Terrapin Medivac, and the base Terrapin, which I presume are the updates to the Terrapin, but I haven't tried any of these vehicles in 4.0 yet. And apparently the FOIP improvements, or face over IP improvements, are in, which we saw at CitizenCon, refining the whole movements and making it a lot more crisp and clear, but again, I haven't tested that, so fingers crossed those improvements are good. Now, my favourite bit about 4.0 at this time, aside from just exploring the really interesting new locations, they are fascinating by the way, but it's the moving clouds, especially on Bloom. Now I'm not sure exactly which planets have it. I think so far there's only 2 planets in Pyro with moving clouds. I could be wrong. If you have seen moving clouds at all in Stanton or Pyro for 4.0, do let me know where. But I spent ages just standing and watching them move across the sky, going from a bright sunny day to being completely overcast, covering the location in shadows, or having small pockets of land lit up brightly by the sun, while the surrounding area was all dark and moody. It is beautiful. Now, I have no idea whether we will see any form of weather come to 4.0. I really hope so, but from what we heard on Star Citizen Live the other week, it sounds like there's more to do. It doesn't sound like we're going to get weather in 4.0, but it already has a huge improvement on the overall feel of a location as clouds roll in and out, just stopping to watch them, especially as the planets and lighting in 4.0 seem to be much nicer here in Pyro than on Stanton in the current live build, the 3.2.4.3 build. I haven't been to Stanton in 4.0 though, so I couldn't say whether that system looks better or not, Again, if you have spent time in Stanton in 4.0, do let me know if the visuals look nicer or if there are any moving clouds. I would love to know. Anyway, that is the latest information on the current 4.0 patch. That is my experience. It is a drastic improvement from the previous build. And although there is so much more to do before it can move into Wave 2, if they can knock out a patch that is that much better than the previous one, then by the time the next patch does come along, we could be well on our way to moving through more waves. It is just too hard to tell how long it will take. Even Cloud Imperium won't know. I am certain that they are trying to get 4.0 out to live before the end of the year, before the holiday break in mid to late December, but whether it's possible is the big question that has no answer at this time. Now, before I go, there are some huge Black Friday sales going on for the TOBII Tracker 5, which is 20% off, GameGlass, where I can get you 30% off an annual pass, and MONSTERTECH is also offering 20% off. Now is a great time to pick this stuff up, and using the links or codes provided below will take you to those deals, but they will also provide my channel with a direct kickback. And a massive thank you to everyone who has done so already. It is extremely appreciated. Also, I should be getting the final pieces of my MONSTERTECH rail system soon, so I will be setting that up and showing you how that turns out. But with that said, here is to more 4.0 progress. I am really excited to see how the remainder of the year goes. If you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, I stream 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday between 2 PM and 6 PM GMT here on YouTube and over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother. You are all more than welcome to come and hang out, whether you are a new backer, an old backer returning, or just want to hang out and chat about all things Star Citizen. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you'd like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Cannot do without you guys. Thank you for the support, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.